You wanted to speak with me?
I've got something to show you.
What's this about? A lightsaber?
Not just any lightsaber.
It can't be.
So you recognize it?
That I do. It is the dark saber, a symbol for the leader of House Vizsla, and later the group known as Death Watch.
I didn't know Mandalorians developed a type of lightsaber.
We didn't. This was one of a kind. Legend tells that it was created over 1,000 years ago by Tar Vizsla, the first Mandalorian ever inducted into the Jedi Order. After his passing, the Jedi kept the saber in their temple. That was until members of House Vizsla snuck in and liberated it. They used the saber to unify the people and strike down those who would oppose them. At one time, they ruled all of Mandalore wielding this blade. This saber is an important symbol to that house and respected by the other clans. I imagine Sabine was excited to recover it.
You wouldn't know it. After we got back from Dathomir, she gave it to me for safekeeping and hasn't brought it up since.
She doesn't want the responsibility. Kanan, if Sabine can wield this saber, she can reunite one of the most powerful houses in all of Mandalore.
You're talking about raising an army.
With Sabine leading it.
Hi everyone, I am the gaming anthropologist, and welcome to The Way of the Way, an ethnographical series on Mandalorian history and culture based on my research. Before we begin today, I just want to say a couple of things. I don't have a desk because we are packing to move, and I'm recording this on a box. That being said, please hit all of the buttons so that I can pay my bills, and also I am having a massive asthma attack right now, so if I'm wheezing, just ignore it. Now, without further ado, let's go on to episode 4, Warrior Ethos. To speak of Mandalorians is to speak of warriors, but the word warrior does not capture the full weight of what combat means within their culture. For Mandalorians, battle is not merely a profession or a necessity. It is a language, a ritual, a way of understanding the self in relation to others. The warrior ethos is not a set of rules, but a cultural grammar, shaping how Mandalorians move through the galaxy and how they imagine their place within it. Dave Filoni has often said that Mandalorians are defined by conflict, not because they love violence, but because conflict has shaped their history, their politics, and their identity. In interviews, he describes them as a people always fighting each other, a remark that carries both tragedy and truth. Their civil wars are not aberrations, they are cultural turning points, moments when the warrior ethos becomes a stage upon which identity is contested and redefined. The tension between martial tradition and everyday life is not a flaw in Mandalorian society. It is the engine that drives its evolution. The Mandalorian Creed, as presented in the show The Mandalorian, is a distilled expression of this ethos. It is not an ancient scripture, but an invented tradition, a phrase anthropologists use to describe practices that feel old because they were meant to feel old. Jon Favreau has acknowledged this in interviews, explaining that the Children of the Watch represent a more orthodox, ritualized interpretation of Mandalorian identity, emphasizing discipline, secrecy, and unwavering adherence to the way. When the armorer speaks, her words carry the cadence of liturgy. This is the way is not a command, but a ritual affirmation, a reminder that the warrior ethos is as much spiritual as it is practical. Din Djarin embodies this ethos in its most intimate form. His combat style is not flashy, it is deliberate, efficient, and grounded in training that began in childhood. When he fights with the calm precision of someone who understands combat as a form of communication. In the first season of The Mandalorian, when he confronts Paz Vizsla in the covert, the clash is not personal. It is a negotiation of status, a ritualized expression of disagreement. The armorer's intervention is not simply an act of authority. It is a reminder that combat within Mandalorian culture has boundaries. Even violence has rules. This ritualization of combat appears throughout Mandalorian history, and the Clone Wars pre-Vizsla's duel with Darth Maul is framed not as a brawl, but as a formal challenge for leadership. The Darksaber is not merely a weapon. It is a symbol of legitimacy, and the duel is a political ritual encoded in violence. Filoni has explained that the Darksaber's power lies not in its blade, but in the story attached to it. Whoever wins the duel inherits not only the weapon, but the narrative authority to lead. In its way, combat becomes a mechanism of governance, a way of resolving disputes that words alone cannot settle. Sabine Wren's training with the Darksaber in Rebels offers window into the warrior ethos. Her struggle is not with the blade, but with herself. Kanan Jarrus tells her that the Darksaber is more than a sword, and Filoni expands on this in behind-the-scenes commentary, explaining that Sabine's journey is about confronting the weight of her family's expectations. When she finally moves with the blade instead of against it, the moment is not triumphant but cathartic. She is learning to inhabit the warrior ethos on her own terms, not as a burden, but as a form of self-knowledge. Real-world parallels help illuminate this dynamic. Many warrior cultures, from the samurai of Japan to the Maasai of East Africa, treat combat as ritualized practice, governed by codes of honor that shape behavior both on and off the battlefield. These codes are not simply rules, they are expressions of cultural values. Mandalorians follow a similar pattern. Their warrior ethos is not about aggression, but about discipline, loyalty, and the pursuit of excellence. It is a way of living that demands constant negotiation between personal desire and communal obligation. This negotiation becomes especially visible in moments of quiet. In The Mandalorian, Din's interactions with Grogu reveal the tension between the warrior's life and the caregiver's role. The ethos demands readiness for battle, yet Din finds himself responsible for a child who represents vulnerability, continuity, and hope. The juxtaposition is not accidental. Favreau has said that the show explores the softer side of a hardened warrior, and this tension is central to Mandalorian identity. The warrior ethos is not incompatible with tenderness. It is shaped by it. A Mandalorian fights not for glory, but for the people they claim as kin. The performance of the warrior ethos extends beyond combat. It appears in the way Mandalorians carry themselves, in the way they speak, in the way they honor their dead. When the armorer melts down the Beskar recovered from Din's bounties, she narrates his deeds as if reciting a saga. The forging of armor becomes a ritual of recognition, a moment when the warrior's actions are transformed into cultural memory. The clang of her hammer is not just the sound of metal being shaped, it is the sound of identity being affirmed.
Why does the armor have such an important leadership role, outranking Mando even with the Darksaber?
She's, kind of the lore keeper of the group. She's the person that knowledge is passed on through. We were talking about it and how there's probably an armor that precedes this armor, and it goes back through time, and so almost
the
like
songs of Eon's past.
Yeah, so. Mando is a warrior, and the warrior carries the sword, and the shaman has a different role. The wizard has a different role. Merlin guides Arthur to find Excalibur. Merlin doesn't wield Excalibur. So I think it's
the high priest and the king are separate in the Bible,
Right.
So we're drawing from myths and archetypes from myths as George has, done and instructed. Yeah.
In diaspora, the warrior ethos becomes even more important. Without a homeworld, Mandalorians rely on tradition to maintain continuity. Combat training, armor maintenance, and ritual duels become ways of preserving culture across distance and time. The ethos becomes a portable homeland, a set of practices that can be carried from one planet to another. This is why the Children of the Watch cling so tightly to their version of the creed. In the absence of Mandalore, the way becomes Mandalore. To study the warrior ethos is to study the Mandalorian soul. It is the thread that connects mythic ancestors to modern warriors, that binds clans together and tears them apart, that shapes leaders and challenges them. It is a living tradition constantly renegotiated through action, memory, and belief. Mandalorians are warriors not because they must be, but because their culture has taught them to fight is to exist, to struggle is to grow, and to stand firm in the face of adversity is to honor the generation who came before them. The warrior ethos is not the whole of Mandalorian identity, but it is the rhythm that underlies it, steady, resonant, and enduring. It is the heartbeat of a people who have survived loss, exile, and fragmentation, and who continue to define themselves through the stories they tell, the battles they fight, and the bonds they forge. In the end, the warrior ethos is not about violence. It is about meaning. It is about the way a people choose to live and the way they choose to remember.
This is the way.